Hey, I remember about 2 weeks ago on my previous video, whatever that was, where I said, hey, I want to post a video at the end of every week because I was going to be upticking in the book consumption, and I most certainly have, but I'm in the point where that was 2 weeks ago, so now I have 2 weeks worth of books to talk about. I also have a book haul, and that 2 weeks worth of books is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 books to talk about in 2 weeks. So I have the book haul. I'm going to haul the books first because I don't know why. It just makes more sense to me. Because 2 of these books I won't be reading for another month or, well, maybe, oh my god, it's October. Anyway, I probably won't be reading these until next month, but the first 2 I actually purchased. I bought books. A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. This is about hiking the Appalachian Trail, which is secretly something I really hope to do one day. Maybe not so secretly. I don't know. I really want to do it, but it's scary. I love hiking books, so so far I have not read a single book involving the Appalachian Trail. I've only read books about hiking the PCT, the Pacific Crest Trail. I got Addie LaRue, like everyone else. This is one of my most anticipated books for the year, and I plan to read it in either November or December, so that'll get done. Then the rest of these are library hauls, which are all going back on Wednesday, with exception to maybe one of these books. The first one, Gretchen Rubin's, okay, Outer Order, Inner Calm. This is about organizing, I think. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Gretchen Rubin right now. Well, I've only read the one book, but she's wrote the Happiness Project, which is not a book I was really fond of. Next book, Agatha Christie, And Then There Were None, which I picked up for the Marauders Book Club. I'm going to talk about this in just a bit because I finished it this week, actually. These next 2 books are a part of the Fortnite Frights, which I'm participating in. It's run by Seiji over on Artisan Geek, and I'll link you to her channel, and that's still going on this week. This actually involves my reading plans for the next week, but this is I think it's one of the group books for the week, The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This is also going to be on Lala's Literally Dead Club for next month, I believe. So I want to finish it this week. I might actually be picking this up on audio because I do have an Audible credit coming through and one still pending, so I may just listen to this week at work. We'll see. I also have, for the Fortnite Frights, I picked up The Vegetarian by Han Kang, and I have read the first story. This is a collection of 3 short stories. I've read the first one so far, and I'm like, ooh. So, and apparently a lot of the people that I either follow or friends on Goodreads, a lot of people have read this, and the opinion seems to be either 5-star or like a 3-star. So intriguing to see where I fall on that scale. So far, I'm leaning in on like a 3.5. There's a lot of themes in here that I'm not too thrilled with, but whatever, I could live with it. It's a cool book so far. And then the last book I have from the library, I'm going to discuss this right now because this is the New Wilderness by Diane Cook, and this is a part of one of the books that I'm reading for the short list of books. This book follows Bee, whose daughter Agnes, she's about 5 years old, and she has a severe lung disease. She needs to get fresh air, but this is in a I want to say dystopian world. It's our world, but it's set in the future when everyone's living in cities, and she is breathing in polluted air, so she's not really getting, she's not living a healthy life. And her mother's new husband, I forgot his name. I want to remember his damn name, but he's not a major character in the book, but he's a professor that studied survival tactics in the wilderness, and he manages to get a group together, and this is like a federally funded program where they can go and live in these federal woods. They're like a government-owned wooded area, something like that. But they're the only people that are allowed, and there are a whole bunch of set of rules that they have to follow, and they also have to make sure that they clean up after themselves and meet the rangers at certain post points. I really enjoy the wilderness and the survival. I really like survival books, but it pretty much it felt very much like there was never really any major climactic moments. The book very much felt like a giant plateau of things happening, something happens, and it's resolved. What I do love about this book is that it didn't fall into tropes that I thought it was going to lead down into. I really thought that there were going to be some more social issues within the group itself, and but they just but Cook sidestepped a lot of that, and it didn't really go down that road, which I appreciated. I'm going to add a little trigger warning here with this book, stillborn birth or miscarriage and abandonment. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars, maybe 4.5 stars. I think it's a solid 4 for me. I really thought this was going to be a 5-star read, but I'm pleased with it. For those who are interested, I've read 4 of the 6 shortlist books so far, and of the books, I say The Shadow King is my number 1, and then I think Shuggy Bean, and then The New Wilderness, and then in real life. Okay, and then last week I had finished 4-ish books. The first, other than The New Wilderness, that was the first book I read. I finally finished The Faceless Old Woman Who Secretly Lives in Your Home, a Night Vale novel, which doesn't exactly feel super Night Vale-y. It does when you get to the more modern Faceless Old Woman points in the book, when she's in a contemporary setting and she's antagonizing this guy, Craig, who is a character that you meet in the podcast itself. But then she talks about her past, and at first it was really good. Like, I was really enjoying it because she talked the way that she normally speaks to Craig and to us, other people listening to her. But she didn't exactly... The book starts out in like the early 1800s, and her voice just doesn't, and none of the dialogue, in fact, it really imitates that of that era. And it really took me out of the book, and I kept putting this down. It's basically her revenge story and her life as a land-hugging pirate. And that's pretty much it. It's a solid 3.5 star read for me. And I actually listened to this, Shades of Grey by Jasper Fforde. I liked this. So in this world, first of all, I should point out that the book, it very loudly speaks volumes about class and caste order, and manufactured based on race and ethnicity. Although in this world, this is like I want to say a post-apocalyptic or some sort of like a dystopian society. I mean, there's a shortage of spoons, but whatever. Anyway, it is a quirky read, but this world, everyone can see a certain color, and your color, basically, the color that you can see is essentially like what, it kind of determines your social order in the whole realm of things for no real apparent reason. And that's what our protagonist, who is Eddie Russet. Anyway, he is Russet red. He can see red. I think at the top is the color green, and then it goes to blue and purple, and then red, and then yellow and gray. But in this book, our protagonist gets involved. He and his father's essentially like a doctor. He uses color and light to help the people, and they're moving to this outer skirts, East Carmine. They're moving to these, it's like the outskirts of civil society, and where people basically just do what they want. And he ends up getting involved with this woman named Jane, who's actually a gray, and he is trying to figure out this mystery surrounding the death of this guy that happens at the very beginning of the book. And that's pretty much it. It also involves a lot of like marriage pacts and things like that. This is a quirky book. I can see so much of what was it that I read last year? Early Riser. I absolutely loved that book. I see so much of this in that book, so I can see why people didn't seem to like that book as much, because it felt like he has a very specific way of telling a story, and it's just, I mean, it's fun, and it's just like, it's a fun little mystery type thing, and it's funny, which is not something you normally seek out in dystopian novels, but here you go. The only issue that I have with this is that it does very clearly feel like it is the first book in a long-running series, or maybe not a long-running series, but in a series. But this came out in 2009, and I don't know if we can expect to get the next book, but The next book I completed was Disfigured on fairy tales, disability, and making space. Now this book is nonfiction. Amanda Leduc, she actually has cerebral palsy, so she's talking about how these stories that we read when we were little, including Disney princess type stories that we saw in the movie theaters, but she discusses how people with either scarring, disfigurements, and other mental disabilities and other physical disabilities, how they were differently abled, how that was listed as something that was either somehow a bad thing. It's often used as an archetype for a villain or someone who needs to be fixed and made healed or made better. But that's the whole point of this book, is that we don't need to be trying to help and pity and fix people with disabilities. There needs to be acceptance, and that there need to be more books and fairy tales and other, even like into theater needs to be involved in accepting. This is an incredibly interesting book, and I highly recommend it if you are a writer or you plan to write any fiction, and or even if you do like screenplays and things like that. Highly recommended, because she's got some great insight into how you really want to involve people that are differently abled and that may not look like a princess or the Disney shit that we are force-fed now. Small spoiler alert for the Game of Thrones. Not small spoiler alert. Some of us were waiting to, for like when we felt like watching it, to watch it, but now I know how it ends, so. I wanted to add that this book came as a recommendation from Melissa at Fully Booked, and I will link her channel down below. Alright, next book, Pan's Labyrinth by Guillermo del Toro and Cornelia Funk. This book is about a young girl named Ophelia, and you've probably seen the movie. And she and her mother are moving to this old mill in the woods to be with Ophelia's new stepfather, Captain Vidal. He's evil, and Ophelia reads him like a book. But she also reads a lot of books, and she absolutely loves fairy tales. And she is swept away to this adjacent labyrinth one night where the faun running the thing is, or living in it, I guess, he tells her that she is actually a lost princess, and that if she completes these 3 tasks by the full moon, then she can go back home to be with her real parents. And so she's like, okay, sure, and she'll do that. And what I like about this book that I don't recall from the movie, and I think this is the only difference, is that you get these little short stories in between some of the scenes. They're usually involving the task and the characters surrounding, and like more back history into who that frog was, and what they call the pale man, which is, you know, that creepy dude that eats children. But they actually do talk more. There's more back history into that whole mill and everything, which you don't get in the movie. Is it detail that you really need? I don't know. I still do prefer the movie over this book. I come to understand that the book was actually written as like more of like an afterthought to the movie, probably just so that they can, you know, capitalize on the film more, I guess. I don't know. I still don't know. I mean, that was published only like a year ago, maybe like 2 years ago, something like that. But and the movie's like 10 years old now, I think. It's been a while. But anyway, the movie, I still have a preference for it. I think I give this 3.5 stars. Next up, we've got Library Book, And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This book is about 10 people that are taken to an island where they are slowly, well, not slowly, they're just methodically bumped off. All of them. They gotta go. And that's not spoiling anything. You know that's what's going to be happening right away when, you know, the first guy gets killed. But the opening, it opens with a poem that was written, where is it? Okay. It was actually, involves a poem by Frank Green, which I don't think you can see, but it's called 10 Little Soldier Boys, or 10, what was it called? I don't remember what, I think the poem was originally more offensive. The book title itself was more offensive. I'm not repeating it. But at any rate, the entire story involves these 10, they go to Soldier Island, and the entire island is themed around that poem, and how the mystery surrounding who is killing everybody and what the hell, why are they being killed. And I will tell you, this is my first Agatha Christie book. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I gave it 4.5 stars. I mean, I'd be close to a 5-star if the ending didn't quite seem quite as random as it did, but I appreciated it more than any other modern day mystery that I've read since. Like, this was written in the 1930s, but this is what we get, and it's twisty and very well crafted, and I quite understand why she is listed as the Queen of Mystery, as they tell you right on the top of the book. But anyway, I absolutely loved it, and I will most certainly divulge into more Agatha Christie books. I think I've always sidestepped her novels just because I've consumed a bunch that were Christie-like and that they were inspired by her writing, but they just felt too forced. This was well crafted. That's all I'm just gonna say. Go read it. It's fun. I know a whole bunch of people die and I'm like, it was fun, but it was. The last book I completed this week is Fledgling by Octavia E. Butler. I completed Kindred earlier this year, oh well, a couple months ago. I read that and I absolutely loved it. And so I went into this with a higher expectations. And it's not that it's bad. Let me explain. So, this is a vampire novel. Our protagonist, Shori, is actually a hybrid vampire person. She's a hybrid vampire. Wakes up with no memories at all. She's in extreme pain. She's starving. She's she's a vampire. She doesn't quite know it yet, but she was attacked. She and her family were attacked, and she's basically trying to like find a place to hide and to recover. All we know is that someone involving the slaughtering of her family is that they didn't approve of what they did and her status. She's partially bred with humans so that she can have some more characteristics that will shield her from harm. What threw me is that Shori is a 50-something-year-old vampire, but she has the appearance of a 10 or 11-year-old girl, which is incredibly disturbing when she's in one of the first few scenes having sex with a 20-something-year-old guy, and it's really disturbing and problematic. But what I didn't care for so much was that a lot of the book felt repeated. The book is rather long for, it's basically establishing a world. It's building out what their vampire life is like. I wouldn't say like a lot of things happen in the book. It's just, it's really about learning about what this vampire society and what it's like to live as an Aina vampire. And that's pretty much it. It's like their rule book. And then we get like a court hearing later on in the story, and that's pretty much it. But it feels like the start of a series, and it's unfortunate that Butler passed away, I think the year after this was published. I gave this book 3 stars just because it's a whole lot of book with like not a whole lot really happens. We're just really learning about this vampire world, so it kind of feels like this, like an opening book to a series, but we're unfortunately never gonna get. But yeah, that's it. Now for reading plans for the rest of this week and through Halloween. We are halfway through Fortnight Frights, as I've noted. Read several books this week, and I've actually started The Vegetarian. I'm going to be reading at least one more of these stories tonight before I head into bed. I am also reading, which is completely unrelated to Fortnight Frights, Sorrow by Tiffany D. Bartolo. And this I actually have as I want to call it an e-arc, but it's really a PDF file that says, you know, it's like, do not resell on this, like imprinted in the background. And it's just, it's not the funnest of experiences reading a book, but I'm enjoying the book so far. And I wanted to get through that because it's actually coming out this Tuesday, but I don't think I'm going to make it. I'm not going to kill myself to read it just because I want to read the book before it comes out. Oh, and I'm about a quarter of the way through Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and I'm really liking that a lot. I read a lot of comments about it, and I didn't know why everyone was reading this book this year. I didn't realize that it was coming out as a Netflix movie until like 2 weeks ago. So it's like, all right, well, I'm reading it anyway, so why not? So I do plan to watch the movie after the fact, and apparently people are none too thrilled about the ending of the film and are recommending the Alfred Hitchcock version, so we'll see. If you have any recommendations for spooky reads, leave them down below, because I'm clearly still in the mood. And Halloween is but 7 days away, well, 6. 5. Anyway, I'll be seeing you around with a new video soon. Bye. Thank you for watching. Oh yeah, and subscribe, because you want to.